Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm going to provide an update on Vizsla Royalties. For those of you that are not aware, Vizsla Royalties is a single asset precious metals royalty holder, with the principal asset being Panuco project, which is Vizsla Silver's flagship silver and gold development story located in Mexico. We are listed on both the Toronto Stock Exchange under the ticker VROY, as well as the OTC in the US under the ticker VROYF. I will be making some forward-looking statements today. So just to reiterate the opportunity here and the investment thesis, it's really a threefold investment thesis. We've got upside to project development, as of course Vizsla Silver advances the project towards feasibility through permitting, project finance, and of course to ultimately get to first silver and gold in the second half of 2027. There's tremendous amounts of upside still related to that mine plan as Vizsla Silver sorts out the sequencing of that mineralization and brings forward more ounces, of course, to bolster those economics. But in addition, there's tremendous amounts of exploration upside that exists in this district. So far, Vizsla Silver has outlined 93 kilometers of cumulative vein strikes. So that's the amount of veins that they've mapped and sampled on surface. And the mine plan that is going to go into this feasibility study that's pending represents about 8% of that total 93 kilometers. So still lots of mineralization that they can bring in to the fold in terms of an economic mine plan, but also the potential to locate additional centers of high-grade mineralization to exploit in future mine studies, ultimately to get into production. And lastly here, the timing, right? There's a scarcity right now of these tier one assets that are out there in the world, especially if you're looking for a primary silver tier one royalty. In fact, there's 0 tier one silver royalties held outside of the big three royalty companies that are trading at multi-billion-dollar valuations. So we've got something special here, and when you've got rising commodity prices, both in the silver and gold space, it only stands to be that much better in terms of that cash flow generation owing to Vizsla Royalties. For those that are not aware, about 2 months ago, we increased our royalty ownership on the Panuco asset. We now have 3.5% covering an NSR royalty covering the Panuco project mine plan, and then an additional 2% covering all of that exploration upside potential that I alluded to a moment ago. In fact, this map really does highlight where those royalties are covered. You can see the light green concessions, the 3.5%. It really does cover the bulk of the mine plan. There is a small bit of Napoleon here that is not completely covered. However, that is covered by the 2% NSR covering those exploration concessions. The last element here is this right of first refusal on any new property acquisitions that Vizsla Silver is to make within a 24-month period. And for those that are not aware, Vizsla Silver has been incredibly active in terms of property acquisitions in and around this Panuco project number 1. You can see a little bit of that here down below the project. This is a San Enrique acquisition. They also made a recent acquisition called Santa Fe, which does have an operating center, also contiguous to the south. But then there's also a big, large asset, about 10,000 hectares, located up to the north, about 30 kilometers, called La Garra. Those don't have royalties yet, so I won't spend the time talking on them, but that does hold an opportunity for Vizsla Royalties and its shareholders for future growth. So I just want to touch quickly on the Panuco asset, just give you a sense of its access to infrastructure, of course, the ability to push it forward. This is a brownfields district. So the discoveries date back to the conquistadors here, almost 450, 500 years ago. And it's Vizsla Silver that consolidated and now can actually explore systematically on that consolidated basis. Vizsla Silver is very well funded. It's got about 200 million US currently in the bank, which really enables them to move forward from a position of strength as they negotiate the last elements of project finance, as they march towards through ongoing development, and of course to construct the project at a very modest CapEx build of just $224 million US. So with the 200 in the bank and the CapEx being only 224, they're in a very enviable position to push this project forward in a non-dilutive fashion. So they are advancing again with the feasibility study coming out shortly here. They've got a fully funded test mine that is underway. Most folks don't realize that they are underground now, about 300 meters down the ramp to get to a bulk sample location. That'll serve as really Stope Shape's years 1 and 2. So really getting your hands on that mineralization early, it benefits everyone in terms of de-risking, all to get to first silver in the back end of 2027. This is the resource growth that's gone over the years at the Panuco project. And again, it's a testament to how well endowed this area is with silver and gold mineralization. What you're seeing here is only based on silver and gold, and it's happened in a very rapid fashion. Vizsla Silver has drilled about 400,000 meters since 2022, outlining a global resource base of over 360 million ounces of silver equivalent. Every structure that made up this resource is open in every direction. Here's a closer look at that resource. So you've got 11 key structures here, namely Copala and Napoleon being the largest, but they're open not only laterally along strike, but they're also open at depth. We have not tested the depth extent whatsoever at Vizsla Silver of these key structures. It's very likely that you'll be mining here for 50 plus years on these structures that you see today. But of course, the mine plan that was published last year by Vizsla Silver in the form of a preliminary economic assessment, or a PEA, highlighted about 20 million ounces per year in the first few years, and then dropping down to about 15 million ounces over the life of the project. These are phenomenal numbers. If you were in production today with these numbers, well, you'd probably be, at least in those first few years, the third largest silver primary mine on the planet. And with that life of mine numbers, you're in the top 5. So it's very clear that this is a world-class tier 1 production profile. And of course, Vizsla Royalties having significant exposure in terms of that 3.5%. That's what you're seeing here in the dark, or the more green color. And then of course that darker shade, as mentioned, it covers a small portion of the northern end of Napoleon. The cash flows that we're expecting here are in the range of 18 million US discounted over the life of the project. You can see that that's significant in terms of exposure here for Vizsla Royalties and its shareholders. But beyond that operational upside, there's tremendous amounts of exploration upside. And I suggest everybody on the call goes over to Vizsla Silver's website. They just recently did an exploration webinar with their VPX, Jesus Velador. He's a PhD in epithermal systems here, to really highlight where that next leg up could come from, not only extensionally from where the open-ended resources in the mine plan exist right now, but within haulage distance. And that's what you see in this orange ellipse here in the bottom left-hand corner of this map. That any discovery made within that ellipse is within direct haulage distance to the proposed mill site. That could be a direct knock-on effect to the mine plan that already exists. But then, of course, you've got all of these satellite or distal targets that we're highlighting here that really, if success is made and a discovery is made, potentially could warrant its own standalone mill, similar to what is envisaged down here in the southwest corner, and potentially justifying the same economics that we highlight right down here. And again, just to reiterate, you're looking at a $1.1 billion after-tax NPV5 with an 86% IRR, and that's based on that PEA production profile. Of course, things are likely to improve with the FS coming out here shortly. Quickly, to just highlight the development timeline here, PEA was announced, conversion drilling leading into that resource update that I highlighted. And of course, permits have been submitted around Valentine's Day this year. Feasibility study slated for the second half of this year. As soon as we receive positive receipt of permits, we get right into construction and some of those long lead items to get things underway to ultimately achieve first silver here in the back end of 2027. If we look at the corporate structure here, you know, it is Vizsla Silver shareholders, as Vizsla Royalties was a direct spin out from Vizsla Silver. So Vizsla Silver, if you had 3 shares at the time of spin out, you received 1 share in Vizsla Royalties. Vizsla Silver is a shareholder. They, in fact, hold a 17% ownership. And the impetus for the spinout was always to provide optionality for Vizsla Silver for ongoing exploration and, of course, ongoing development to be less dilutive in terms of equity financings. We are well covered here. We've got CIBC at a $4 target, Raymond James at a $2.50 target, and Canaccord at a $3.75 target. I should note to the viewers on this call, the Raymond James has yet to update their target price since acquisition of that additional 3% royalty that I mentioned at the beginning of this call. So this is outdated. In fact, I think this report was published last year. So they've got some work to do in terms of updating. But the real key, you know, we like to highlight Vizsla Royalties, you know, it's different than Vizsla Silver. Vizsla Silver is not for sale, right? At Vizsla Silver, we're focused on building the next world-class silver mine, and we want to maximize value for shareholders. And really that means taking it into production and then growing that production profile, either through acquisitions or exploration. But when we look over at royalties, and again, harking back to the impetus for spinning out this file as an optionality tool, Vizsla Royalties is for sale, right? And so when we look at those players in the spaces, who could afford us for the valuation that it warrants, well, there's only a handful that could pay up to 2x NAV or net asset value and still have it be accretive to their overall profile. Right now, you're looking at an average here in the royalty space of about 1.3 times price to NAV, where VROY is trading at, you know, almost 1.1 times price. But these big boys, you can see here where they're trading, you know, up northwards of two times price to NAV. But there's a few precedent transactions that I like to highlight, and that's Origin recently. They transacted with Triple Flag. So Triple Flag purchased Origin for about $343 million at a 1.8 times PNAV acquisition multiple. Similarly, Great Bear Royalties, another single asset royalty, was transacted for $200 million at a 1.4 times price to NAV ratio. Where we're trading now, if you were to apply that same multiple, the average multiple of being 1.6, you can see that our file would be worth upwards of 350, 400 million Canadian. That's exactly where we feel this is heading. It creates an excellent opportunity for shareholders right now. You can get delivered on that operational upside, given what silver is doing from PEA to FS, and of course on that exploration upside, bringing more ounces into the fold in time. Of course, through its exploration programs. So I'll land it there and open it up for questions if there are any. But again, this is a standout project with a standout team, and timing could not be better. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody. Don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions. info@VizslaRoyalties.com or drop us a line. Thanks a lot.